Okay, everybody, it's 9:30. We'd like to start promptly so everyone can go about their busy day. I know some of you are doing curbside or started curbside or thinking about curbside, and there's a lot of things that goes into that. So welcome. If you're just joining us, this is a circulation group meeting. We've combined the circulation advisory group time along with the circulation user group meeting together. So myself, Samantha, Peggy, Juan, and various other SWAN staff will jump in when needed. And please note you guys have the availability to unmute yourself if you need to speak on something. So if you submitted a question, and you need to explain that a little further, we can always unmute you and you can have the floor. And we also have a chat option here. That way you can just type in if you feel more comfortable doing that instead of speaking. Okay, so I'm Crystal Vella. I'm the UX consultant here at SWAN. Along with me is Sam Deedle. She is the co-chair for Circulation Advisory. And I think we have Vicki here today from SWAN, and Helen and Dawn. I'm just touching on those who are here from SWAN who will probably be jumping in or have something on the agenda as a topic of discussion. We also have Peggy. Want to say hi, Peggy?
Good morning, everybody. Good to be here.
All right. We do have somebody. If you guys can just make sure you're muting yourselves when you come in, we can hear your side conversations. Okay, so I am going to pass this over to Sam. Sam, do you wanna, she's gonna talk about some Chicago limits and how they've changed. Sam, you wanna take it over?
I will take it. So hi everybody. I just want to give a little update on some Chicago limits. So as most of everybody knows, we've always had a reciprocal agreement with Chicago Public Library, and they had previously imposed limits on their patrons, and so we had accommodated those in our ILS. For those of you that don't remember offhand, those limits were Chicago patrons could not check out console games at all. They were banned also from checking out preloaded digital media, so that's things like launch pads and playaways and play views and things like that. And then they were also limited to 10 each of CDs and videos like DVDs and Blu-rays. But at the Fine Free panel, which feels like about 18 years ago, but during that panel, Laura Gertz-Keynes mentioned that these limits changed. So after that panel, we followed up with her and she confirmed that. So the only limits that they continue to impose on their patrons are on preloaded digital media. And they don't impose these on reciprocal borrowers. So our SWAN patrons aren't blocked from checking out things like console games on their system. So we wanted to update our circ and hold maps to accommodate this so that we can continue this nice, breezy level of reciprocity. So let me show my screen just for a second, and then I'll pass it on. Okay, so you should be seeing the circ map, like a Excel spreadsheet of the circ map. Hopefully you can all see it. And I'm showing specifically Woodridge here. So what this means for you is that starting about last week, although we're living in a strange kind of vacuum right now, but the edits were active last week, CPL patrons will be able to check out console games, and they will no longer be limited to 10 each of CDs and DVDs and the like. So in this spreadsheet of the circ map, those yellow highlighted lines that were previously limiting Chicago patrons to 10 each of all the like CD and DVD and Blu-ray, et cetera, item types, those have all been removed from every single library's section of the circ map. And then the ones in green below it, which were limiting console games up until the last line there. Those have also been removed. The only thing that remains is that preloaded media item types are continuing to be blocked. So you will no longer see, if you were one of those libraries that was used to checking circ rules for troubleshooting and things like that, like when a patron checks something out and you look to see which circ rule was assigned, you won't see any more CPL limit circ rules because all of those have been removed. Those were the ones limiting the Chicago patrons to 10 each of those CD and DVD, et cetera, item types. But they will continue to be blocked from placing holds and checking out those preloaded digital media item types. So the only line that's going to remain here is this 2266 preloaded digital media line. Just wanted to give you an update on that. So that's something we accommodated. But of course, as a reminder, because of our current situation, even though CPL patrons will be allowed to technically place holds on console games, etc., right now, because of our current situation, CPL patrons are not able to place those holds, so any kind of holds that you're going to be processing are going to be manual staff place holds based on a CPL patron calling you and you setting materials aside. So hopefully that all makes sense. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I do, Sam.
Okay, great.
So before they were limited to a max of 50 items at any given time on their card, is that also, has that limit also been eliminated from?
No, that's a really good question, Peggy. No, that hasn't. That overarching limit still is in place. These are just the item type specific limits that were adjusted based on what we heard from Laura. Yeah.
Okay, so they still have a limit of 50 items on their card.
They do. That was not changed.
Okay, and then how many holds maximum can they have on their account? Has that changed?
That has not changed either. I'm going to pull up the user profile limits real quick just to make sure I'm giving you the right numbers. But we did not make any modifications to that. So anything that was previously in place as far as those user profile limits is still standing.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. But let me just pull that up real quick so I can make sure I'm giving you the right information.
Helen, while Sam's pulling that up, can you just touch on what would have happened in the past if we would have checked out a console game to a CPL patron and then they ended up losing it versus what will happen now in terms of billing and agreement?
Previously, if we had billed them for an item type that they didn't agree to circ, they would push back and they would not reimburse us for that. So this will allow us to get reimbursed should those items go missing.
Yeah, and so that's a huge part of it. And then to answer your question, Peggy, they're still limited to 50 checkouts overall, and they're limited to 5 holds.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
You are welcome.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Sam? Okay, the chat looks clear.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just to free it up for the next person.
Okay. All right. So here we have, is this super tiny? Should I enlarge this for everybody? Okay, the next item on our agenda here is billing notice wording. Helen, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So currently our billing notice wording, I just posted the link to the documentation on our support site. It's all the way at the bottom of the page. Our current wording says the following items are presently 42 days overdue and assumed lost. To reinstate borrowing privileges, please return or pay for the following items. Unless your account is settled immediately, it may be sent to a collection agency and additional charges assessed. Now that last bit isn't true right now for 2 reasons. None of the collection reports are actually not working. They're not scheduled. We're not running them. And so they wouldn't have additional charges assessed. They wouldn't be picked up by Unique. And two, Unique doesn't collection report or credit report anybody anymore. So that's no longer accurate, but it's also a little bit threatening right now when everybody's feeling a little stressed out. So I'm suggesting that we revise the wording to make it one, more accurate, and two, a little bit more understanding and flexible. The proposed wording I have is the following items are presently 42 days overdue and assumed lost. Please return or pay for the items as soon as possible to prevent loss of borrowing privileges. If you have any questions or would like to discuss a payment plan, please contact your home library to make arrangements. So just kind of turning them around, starting a conversation with you all instead of just kind of threatening them with an empty threat. Sure, Brittany, I could post that into the chat, no problem.
Victoria likes the wording. Brittany is stating that I do know not all libraries do a payment plan. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Jerry says the wording's nicer, but they don't do payment plans. Okay.
Could you
Maybe
say
if
payment?
options.
Yeah.
To discuss options.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any questions or would like to discuss payment options, please contact your home library to make arrangements.
If that's only a single word edit, I will call this a win. Okay.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, Dawn says that it was 2 words, so still a win though, I'd say.
2 words. To discuss payment. Oh, because I have to get rid of the name.
Yeah.
Thanks, grammar police.
We do have a few questions, Helen, coming in. Would this be permanent wording or is this just temporary?
This is going to be temporary because we're not running the collection reports right now, which is why that statement is inaccurate twofold. So as soon as we start running those again, then we would modify it again. Let me click back to it. Because we would have to put that caveat back in that additional charges will be assessed.
Okay. So once we start running those reports again, Helen, we would change the wording back, you think?
We would probably change it back, but we would still have to amend the collection report statement, the credit report statement.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Laura, yes, they will still be sent to collections once we start up the reports again. They're all suspended at the moment.
Well, that's an idea. Don says, can we keep this new wording but add back the materials recovery charge?
Yeah, I like that better
I like
because
that, me
it's
too.
softer.
Okay, Victoria likes that.
I think we've heard for quite a while that this language has been kind of frightening for patrons, and especially since Unique really isn't, a collection agency. They're helping us in the collection process, but patrons don't understand the difference between that. So I don't know if people are in agreement that kinder language can maybe just be reviewed when we do start doing the Unique collection recovery again.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
And we are looking at, Helen has a timeline for when those reports that do billing and collection and all of that are likely to turn back on, and we'll share that on next Tuesday. But Helen, what was the timeline for the billing and the timeline for collection reports starting again that
I'm
we're
pulling
thinking?
that up right now. So we were assuming that the stay-at-home order would end June 1st, in which case we would start up the billing notices again in week 5. So that would be the end of June, first week in July. And then the collection reports would pick up at the end of July, first week in August.
Okay.
Give people plenty of time to let the dust settle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great idea. All right, so we'll change the few words now, and then we can, I really do like Dawn's wording here about adding back the materials recovery charge, because that will be true once all of these reports get back up and running. So we'll change it a little bit now, and then once everything's back up and running, we will revisit this wording and get some feedback from Circ Advisory on the language.
If we added a sentence that said something like materials recovery charges may be assessed, wouldn't that cover everything now if we use the may word, instead of will? You know what I mean? Because some libraries do charge, others don't, so it's kind of always going to be may.
So please return or pay for the items as soon as possible to prevent loss of borrowing privileges and avoid material recovery fees.
Something more like borrowing privileges. To prevent loss of borrowing privileges. No, that would kind of have to go before it in my.
Okay, well we can fit
yeah,
it with
we'll finesse it. Yeah. Yeah, Vicky has a point, because not all libraries do send it to unique either. So yeah, we'll throw a may in there and finesse some wording out. Helen's really good at that.
Thanks, Crystal.
You are. It's nice language. All right. Okay, let's see. Okay, Peggy, I'm gonna let you have the floor. This was a topic given to you.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. All right, we had a question from Victoria at River Forest, and she was looking for suggestions for how to handle segregating items that need to be returned to their home library. She wanted to know whether each of these items should be individually labeled and what considerations libraries are making for these items until delivery resumes. So I think this is a great question. I think this is something that's on everybody's mind right now, is they're starting to think about their procedures as staff return to the buildings and we're processing our book drops. You know, as we check materials in and we have all these materials that belong to other libraries, what do we do with them? So I think we're all looking for, you know, what would be the best practice? What do we do with these items? You know, I know that at my library, this is something I'm kind of thinking about, how will I handle all these items that are owned by other libraries that I will have accumulating. So I think that's the discussion that we need to have now. So does anybody have any thoughts? Does anybody have any suggestions? I know at my library, my first step will be to quarantine these items, when they come in the book drop, and then they will get checked in. And I believe SWAN is suggesting then each item be individually, once it's checked in, each item will need a routing label, correct?
Not necessarily.
No, you're not thinking.
Until they go through delivery, you really don't need to label them.
Okay, no,
Because if you're creating a bag that's going to go to your neighboring library, and
okay,
you come up with a swap and drop scenario with that neighboring library, then you're just going to hand them a bag, and you don't have to go to all the trouble of labeling those items. Labels are only of value when delivery restarts, so kind of keep that in mind.
okay. All right, so then what would you think, okay, so then maybe just like, maybe use bags? What, like, okay, I have a bag of books for Elmwood Park, I have a bag of books for Schiller, I have a bag of books for Flossmoor, and just kind of group them that way as I'm checking in my materials.
Yes, or even put them on, a shelf or storage, whatever, in space that's for that particular library. Rails has asked that we not store items in bins until delivery is back up and running. So we kind of need
Okay.
another method of those items that aren't ours, where we're going to put them until we can get them back to the owning library.
Right. Okay. So perhaps okay, I see a question in the chat that Kate is asking and Julie's asking, why no bins?
No bins because we will quickly run out of bins as all that stuff is returned. And the bins, they want to be able to process them by library when delivery first starts opening up.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. It's Christine from Bloomingdale. The issue that we're having with that is I'm happy to put stuff in boxes and bags, but the issue we're having is I do not have the space for bags for 100 different libraries. And I've been talking to Rails, and I guess my problem is I have nowhere to put that much stuff. And so my big concern was what other people were doing, because if I was understanding it correctly, we were supposed to have a separate box or bag for each library. And I just don't have that kind of space. So I was curious what other people were doing, because I mean, at that point, we're just going to have to like randomly have stuff flying all over our floors.
Okay. Yeah, see, because like I'm lucky enough that I have a pretty large meeting room. And I was kind of envisioning, using Baker and Taylor boxes maybe, and just sorting, putting the books in, sorting the books that get returned from other libraries in those Baker and Taylor boxes.
We have to use our meeting room for social distancing, though. I can't use it for materials.
Yes, not everybody has that option. So this is a real challenge.
Well, and that somebody mentioned in the chat, the issue that I'm having is I agree. I do think that it's unrealistic for some libraries to be I mean, feasibly, I just can't do it. So, we're going to do the best we can, but, I don't have space for, I mean, and if you look at just the SWAN libraries, that's almost 100, plus we get materials from a bunch of non-SWAN libraries in our area. So we're looking at space for 115, 120 different libraries, potentially. And if delivery doesn't restart, I mean, for months, it's it's already a problem. I can't imagine what it would look like by the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I see, a suggestion that, like Rebecca at LaGrange is going to they're driving books to the book drops at nearby libraries and then using the blue transit bins for SWAN libraries farther away. I know Brittany's saying they just don't have the manpower and space to be separating every library out into piles. And I think that's a good point that Brittany's making, because for instance, at our library, we're only going to have like a third of our staff on any given day in the building. So that's a big issue too. You only have so much manpower to be handling these items on any given day. So it is going to be a challenge. I think the good news is you could just segregate all these items that aren't owned by your library into one area and just kind of put them aside for now because van delivery isn't in place. And just kind of, take a wait and see. You know what I mean? Just like kind of segregate them there and wait wait and see what what's going to happen with van delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any creative thoughts on this situation?
I think from our perspective at SWAN, if you can offer a swap and drop with your area libraries, that's the most ideal situation. I
Yeah.
understand that that's not feasible everywhere, but if possible, it will get those items back to your library and theoretically, being checked out by your patrons. While all of this is in flux, timing, space, and staffing will always be issues for different reasons. And without delivery right now, it's a very strange world we live in. But we see some questions coming in on the chat. It looks like, Donna's saying if you don't have any swap and drop plans or in the works, label as you would, put in the bins, but note that that will sit there until Rails feels and CTL feels it is safe for them to go ahead and begin delivery again. So just keep that in mind. Oh, Elizabeth says she's going to ask local grocery stores for boxes for storage until delivery starts up. Yeah, that is a good idea. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough about that. Dawn, do you know, Brittany's asking about the timeline. I think we also had another question about when Rails thinks they'll be starting up delivery.
Rails has put out a survey for libraries, and I know that a lot of the libraries have filled that out. And I think they'll be sharing the results of that next week, asking when libraries start to have reopening plans where they would be able to accept delivery. But they're balancing that also with the study that's being done with OCLC and Battelle and IMLS on contamination and how long the virus may stay on materials. And so they're looking at both sides of those and trying to find a compromise. Those study results are not expected out until August. So we just want you all to be prepared that if we live in a no delivery world through June, through July, we may need to come up with some alternative plans. So I think you all know what's best in your environment, what you can do as far as storage and communicating with other libraries, but we may be living without delivery for a while. It's just a reality.
If I'd kind of like to ask everyone So far, we've seen that the libraries that are opening, I haven't seen any plans starting in June to really open up to the public. Is anyone planning on opening to the public? Because if you're not, there's a lot of area within your library that you wouldn't normally be able to put material that you could use if you're not open to the public. And perhaps you could temporarily use that area within your library, and then when you are ready to open for the public, bag everything up or box everything up and put it into storage if stop and swaps have not been arranged. I know that when we were first thinking about this, it's like, well, gosh, people only have these small areas, but then it dawned on us that wait, they have the entire library actually, if the patrons aren't coming in.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Vicki. And there are a lot of areas of the library that won't be utilized because patrons won't be in the building. So, we can take advantage of those areas. So for instance, at our library, that's why, we're going to make good use of our meeting room. Because we won't, obviously we won't be having meetings. We won't be having programming going on. So, which is, kind of sad, but, we can use that for, quarantining materials. We have a conference room. We can, store delivery items that'll ultimately be going back to libraries in there. It's, just such a different world we're living in right now. So, it's a very frustrating problem. I think all of us are pretty frustrated, by this. So.
Oh yeah, it's definitely trying times. I mean, I think everyone's doing the best that they can do, especially given the situation, and you're trying to juggle a lot of things, so unfortunately, at this time it isn't our decision to make delivery happen. So we're just kindly offering some type of suggestions or some ways to try to think on how to help or manage these materials as they're going to be returned, as I'm sure as you're already seeing. So yeah, you guys are doing, the best that you can.
And I think we can see reflected in the chat there, there is no one size fits all model. Some people are able to shift space and utilize different areas of the library. Some aren't able to. And then the number of staff available to work at one time is also a consideration. So I think that's the strength of these meetings, when we can all share ideas and think of things that maybe we haven't thought before.
Mm-hmm. Okay, was there any other
Yeah, Julie asked about if it's not safe for rails, why is it safe for us? And I did answer that question in chat. I said, if a library is making a decision to open for curbside and you're quarantining material, the same safety measures you apply for those decisions apply for any swap and drop opportunities. So you would not be swapping and dropping anything to any library that isn't reopening for curbside and has a plan in place for quarantining material, or their book drop isn't open. So we're not suggesting that you just get the books back to any library. It has to be libraries that do have a plan in place that they're able to process those items, as does your library, and you can make those arrangements.
I also see a comment here from Lucas, who's at Elmwood Park. Lucas, would you like to explain this a little, like kind of share this thinking with everybody?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you just fine. Thanks, Lucas.
Yeah, so in our circ workroom, we have a lot of we have shelving that we use for recently returned and checked in materials, and that is a hub where shelvers go and grab materials and then distribute them to the corresponding department throughout the day. And we figured as we're doing these on-shelf pick lists for holds, we didn't want to have so many places for someone to have to look. And then we also realized that if people are looking in that corner, if they are, then the shelvers are still going to that corner. It's just going to be a hot spot for people to need to be there at the same time. So we're no longer using that. And immediately after we discharge materials, we're putting them into their appropriate department rather than having that step in the circ workroom. And then because we're not using those shelves, we are able to now use those to store other library materials so that they're kind of out of the way and it's space that we already had allotted for material storage anyway. But I know not every library would have that, but that's just something we did at Elmwood Park.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
You know, and that's one of the things too that is going to, you know, you bring up a great point, Lucas. That's one of the things that's going to be a real challenge as we go back into our buildings is the issue of keeping staff members socially distant as they're working. And I know even from the very brief times that I've been in my building, you know, to grab some items out of the book drop and to kind of quarantine some items, you know, if there's been other staff in the building at the same time as I've been there. This whole dance of making sure you're not too close to others as you're working, that's really, it's challenging. As I say, it's a whole new world we've been dropped into. So that's a great idea. Very well thought out. Thank you for sharing that. That's one of the nice things about us all coming together is sharing ideas like this. So anything else anyone can share on this topic? And Victoria, I hope this certainly helps you as you plan.
Yes,
All right.
she said yes, thanks. Great.
Great,
So much,
great,
everyone.
Victoria.
So I just wanted to point out on the SWAN website, we have some library examples of reopening procedures. On this agenda is on the SWAN website, and you can see some libraries have gone ahead and given us their reopening plans. They are probably ever changing, as we have seen. Most things will change in the blink of an eye. So these might not be the most up to date, but when we ask that when they submit them, you know, they give us the most up to date. And if they change things along the way, you know, they send it in again and we can go ahead and put it up here for everyone to view. So if you or your library are thinking about how to move forward, a few of these libraries have gone ahead and thought about this. Let me pull up Green Hills real quick, just so you can see. You know, we're just trying to get everything together so that you guys can have some sort of research to go off of when you're making your decisions or your administration's making their decisions. So, you know, it's nothing necessarily fancy or anything like that. We can, you know, they pop it into a Word document and send it on over or PDF. And some of them go, you know, into different phases and how to reintroduce services. So that's all here for you. I'm not going to necessarily go through all of it or point any library out as someone to model necessarily. As we can see, every library is going to have their own challenges and have to do what's best for their staff and their public. So this is just a great resource if you're looking, or if you do have a reopening plan that you would like to share, you know, please send it on in to us. Dawn, is it just help at SWAN libraries? You guys are collecting those?
Yep.
Okay, help at swanlibraries.net if you have anything you want to add in there. Curbside. This is just something fun, evergreen put together. They made a little YouTube video on how you can, for their residents really, it's kind of like their PR, so that they can know how curbside is going to work at their library. So I just wanted to plug this a little bit, and let you know that some libraries are doing this. Not sure if this would work for everybody, but definitely a way to get the word out there. You know, I've had the pleasure of looking at yes, Claudia, I can help you with that. I have looked at a lot of library websites and everything, and recently and Facebook pages, and everybody kind of is putting their information out there in different ways. So YouTube is obviously also something that at least some libraries are utilizing to their benefit. Before we lose it, I see Claudia asked, where can I find a list of open book drops? So this information is very difficult to find, but we have gone ahead and put it on the SWAN website. In this members curbside information, if you're all following here, we do have a list of every library and some information. So if they're using the curbside communicator, if they are doing curbside, and if they have their book drop open or closed. Now, most of this information is either given to us in a ticket, or we have gone ahead and collected this by searching through your website, searching through your Facebook, something like that, to try to obtain this information. So if you go ahead and look, thank you for posting the link, Vicki. If you go ahead and look at this and see that your library isn't reflected properly, or you do have a opening date, please send in a ticket to help at SWAN Library so we can get you up to date here. Okay. Right. Okie dokie. Okay. I just wanted to give a little plug here about the curbside communicator from Unique. We do have information here about it. We have a little brochure. How this works is pretty simple. Dawn and Stephen did a little trial run for the fireside chat, and it worked really well. It is a communicator for you to communicate with your patrons and when they're ready and in your parking lot. So it's like a text messaging system where you would get, you know, the information that they're there to pick up their materials, and you can respond in kind. There is a brochure, so it's kind of already made in here how it works very efficiently. If you'd like this service, if you're thinking about this service, please, again, send in a help ticket to help@swanlibraries.net. Victoria states there's a webinar at 2 p.m. today. So there you go. So you can learn all day long. So I just wanted to make sure that you are all aware of this. If you weren't, or if you weren't able to attend the fireside chat, or you're thinking about curbside reopening and how that would look. Thank you, Don. Don entered a short video in here for anyone who is looking for more information on that. Just want to make sure you're all aware of the resources and that are available. Are there any questions about curbside or the unique communicator?
Crystal, Jim
Yeah.
had a question. He wanted to
that's
know
right.
if any of his colleagues had were going to stagger or limit the number of people picking up their holds during the day doing curbside service.
Hey, this
So
is Brittany.
I was
Sorry,
yes.
I jumped on this because funny enough, we started on Monday. We had slots every 30 minutes. This is Brittany at Westmont. And by day 3, aka today, we have changed that. So we figured out that our major bottleneck was communicating with patrons and the amount of emails that had to go back and forth to get a curbside slot. So we actually changed from slots to just saying, hey, come on, get your stuff. We'll organize it in alphabetical order and just be ready. Because I thought the bottleneck would be youth and adult taking orders or us pulling the pick list, things like that. It was the phone calls and the emails and the second phone calls and actually, can I come later? And, you know, patrons misinterpreting emails. So it takes 3 back and forth by the time you actually get a curbside time slot. So might not be what happens to everyone, but I was really excited about slots and we have immediately removed them.
Brittany, do you have like a set time, or you guys are just open?
We have 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
Monday through Saturday. So we just tell them those are the hours we have curbside available. Come at your earliest convenience. And instead of organizing the bags by time slot, we're organizing the bags by just last name. And today I'll be going in for my second shift. So this will be the first time I do it this way. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, honestly, day 1 and day 2, just trying to get main desk email like figured out, and who have we responded with, who have we not, where is this, that was what we were pulling our hair out about.
Hey, that's very helpful. Anybody else? What has been your experience? Anybody else want to share what's happened at your library? Does everybody come at the same time? Do people kind of just trickle in? We haven't started curbside at Eisenhower yet, so I really don't have a sense of what's going to happen at my library.
I just wanted to share at LaGrange that we're actually starting like right now, like as of 9 a.m. today.
Okay.
So that's why I've been like away from the talk a little bit. We're actually putting a table out next to the library, and then we have a little window that we can see people so they can call us when they get there. So it's really going to be no contact, because when they call us, we're going to run the bag out to them on the table, and then we're just going to they can just pick the bag up. We're just assuming that they are who they say they are.
Okay, that's good to know, because one of the things we were kind of thinking about too is we might have people that don't have cars that might be walk up. And we were thinking of a similar process for our walk up patrons. So we were thinking of something similar, just a table. They call and say they're here. We would just put it on the table, walk away, and they would walk up and grab their bag.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of foot traffic in LaGrange, and then we're also discussing what to do when it's raining out. And I think we will probably just have a table inside the sliding doors. We have sliding doors on the Cossett Avenue side, so then we would just have the table there. That way the books wouldn't be out in the rain.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Rebecca. Anybody else have curbside experience that they want to share?
It looks like Victoria is stating that they're going to also have an outdoor table, but they're going to cover it with all around it with clear plastic so that they can add a barrier, and patrons will show them their ID. CRS is planning to do a last name as well, and they also have purchased cell phone, and they'll be just for curbside. So
Okay, and
Victoria
Dawn is asking if you find, yeah, Dawn says if you find people are bumping into each other at the table, will you change that plan? those with tables, what are you thinking if you find people? Because that's one thing about the table we were kind of worried about. What if patrons start congregating at the table and like chit-chatting and hanging
Yeah,
out there?
Peggy, our population is very small. You know, we're really only 15,000 in LaGrange. I'm not as concerned about people standing around the table. I think we're waiting for people to call us before the item actually goes out. So it's not like multiple items are going to be on the table.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe that will happen, but we have such a long, we're doing 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So it's such a long time that I don't think that that's going to be necessarily the issue.
Yeah. You know, my thing is the things we anticipate being problems never end up being problems. It's the thing you never think of that always catches you by surprise. Oh, I never thought that would be a problem. And then that's the thing that gets you in the end.
Yeah.
Jim, I'm hoping does this help you at all with your question?
Oh, yes.
Unless
Yes, it does. Hi, everyone.
Good.
Yes. Thank you all for the info. I appreciate it.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. Isn't anything else on this topic? We can move along to holds and processing local holds and unsuspending holds. And that I'm going to have to ask Vicky to talk on. She did all these map changes. Vicky, you there?
Yep, sorry, I was unmuting.
I knew you weren't shy. Come on, where are you?
Not me, that's for sure. We did discuss this also in was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday's fireside chats, right? So first we want to cover that our system is now local holds only, as you all know. So only your items will trap holds for your patrons. And what we discovered then, as libraries were starting to do their openings for curbside, is the items currently on the hold shelf and items in the delivery bins are kind of in flux. So even though the holds had been suspended, the items that were either put in transit to fill a hold or the items that had been on your hold shelf to fill the holds kind of had their holds stuck. So what we're asking you to do is we're asking you to do your hold shelf first, and that is where you're going to contact your patron, see if they still want the material. Because the patron had already received pickup notices, we are saying you can go ahead and include those items that are for reciprocal borrowers that were sitting on your shelf. And that's a really good time to let them know also that while they can still have the material that was on your hold shelf, you won't be able to hold material for them until we have delivery back. So they will have to start going back to their home library once they do pick up the items that were on the hold shelf. If the patron does not want the item, if they do want it, you're going to check it out to them right away and go ahead and bag it and have it ready for your curbside delivery. If they don't want it, checking it in is not clearing the hold. So what we are asking you to do at that point is to check on the patron's record, make sure if the hold is still there, cancel that hold, and then you should be able to check it in. That's for your hold shelf. If you're finding that it's still coming up on hold for that patron, you should be able to check it out to a generic user. We're recommending you use your missing XXX, so the XXX being your agency code, to check it out and then just check it right back in. And everything should be clear at that point. For your delivery bins, as those items are coming in, we're also asking that you go ahead and check them in If it is your item and it's on hold for your patron, then you're fine, everything's good. If it is not your item coming up on hold for your patron, we want you to check and see if there are holds for that title for that owning library for pickup. In that case, we ask that you go ahead and check it out to your missing patron and then check it back in. If there are no holds for the owning library, you can contact the owning library and ask them if they would mind if you go ahead and keep it for your patron for them to check out. And remembering that only those local items can fill holds for patrons now. These are just those holds that are kind of in flux. They did not get kind of reset with the suspensions of the holds. And then everything else, it's and then it's, you know, the whole store where you can arrange for swap and drops if you can. And we just want, I know that a lot of libraries are really interested in getting their material back so that they can fulfill holds for their patrons. Does that make sense? Only my second cup of coffee so far today, so I'm not sure that I'm making sense.
Victoria says, if we aren't swap and dropping it, then why can't we check it out to the patron? It's not like it's going to the owning library anytime soon.
Well, while you are not doing swap and drop, that home library might contact you and ask if they can pick their items up in a curbside pickup, especially if they have their own patrons who are waiting for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's out to your patron, they won't be able to get it. And Tom, that's kind of the answer to your question too, Tom, I think. While you might not be arranging something, they might contact you.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we don't want to put a hard, you know, for one thing, we can't police any of this. And all we can do is have, and we don't want to, and all we can do is have the system facilitate the condition, the situation we're in now. We totally trust all of you to make best judgments. We have heard from libraries that really do want their material back because they have limited collections and want to make them available to their patrons. But we also understand there are libraries that are perfectly fine with just get it in the hands of a patron. So we can't make a statement across the board. We trust all of you to make an assessment and talk to your colleagues and do what's best all around.
So Jessica has a question in the chat. She says, when processing delivery that has been sitting there since March, we don't check any items in, we just sort by the library it is going back to?
I think, Dawn, if I remember correctly, we were saying to check them in, correct?
Yeah.
And ignore those transit slips also, because we want to make sure that that item then is going back to its owning library.
So if the case you check an item in and it fits one of those scenarios where it should go back to the owning library and maybe the transit slip is saying go to a third library, you want to make sure it's going back to the owning library when it does end up in delivery. So what you would do is, again, in those situations that are anomalies, you're going to check it out to your missing XXS, then you're going to check it back in, and that's automatically going to match up the item to the transit library. But again, without knowing when delivery is going to start, libraries may have different workflows that they're working out, and you know your constraints and staffing and space and all of that. So we can only offer like a suggestion that is going to work for everyone if we all follow it. But we know that there's going to be other ways that you all need to implement things. So we'll help as best we can if you get in those situations.
So the bottom line is everything is going back to its home library at this point.
That would be the ideal, right?
Yeah, right.
If there was a
And
way
if
to get it there. Yeah, if there was a way to
Right.
get it there, that's the ideal. But knowing that we live in this world where things will just sit, we understand people may make individual decisions in collaboration with their colleagues.
Right, but you know, when you check something in, if it's telling you to do something other than send it back to its home library, you need to take action then to kind of clear that out of workflows.
Right, so
Right.
that's when you would check it out to the missing patron and check it back in.
Right. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all this. It's going against everything that we've always done.
Yes, I know.
You know, it's like
struggle too.
It's kind of like a library Twilight Zone edition or something. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
We all have broken glasses right now.
I know. I feel so sorry for my staff. You know, everything I've taught them to do now, I want them to do something different.
Correct.
It's very stressful for everybody. So, okay. I got you.
Right. And Liz, you're asking what after checking it out to missing and back in, what's the item status? If it's your item, it's either going to be on hold for your patron or it will be on shelf. And if it is another library's item, it should be in transit back to its home library.
Are there any other questions for Vicki?
Jim has a great question, and this is the same thing that I don't know what I'm going to do with this. He says, can you reiterate or clarify how we should handle holds left on the hold shelf for reciprocal borrowers? Because
Sure.
I have the same problem here. So what do we do with those?
Okay, for items that are currently on your hold shelf and have been there since March, when you closed, those patrons already received notification that their item is there. And you can contact them to see if they still want the item. And if they do, you can let them know they can pick it up at your library, that you do still have it for them. However, you will not be able to hold material for them until we have delivery back, and they're going to need to go back to their home library.
Okay, but then Vicki, I have a challenge because, for instance, Eisenhower, our first phase of reopening is home delivery.
Okay.
We're only delivering to Norwich and Harwood Heights residents, and I have all these things on my hold shelf that are for CPL patrons. What do I do with those items?
Right, that one's definitely different then. So,
so maybe you could think on that.
Yeah, I think that what will probably happen is if you check the item out to missing INS and then check it back in, that hold will remain in the hold queue for them.
That's what I'm hoping will happen because I know they're going to still want their stuff. You know, when it becomes possible for them to use our library again. But initially, we're only going to be servicing Norwich and Harwood Heights residents. So,
and that makes sense. I understand that since you're delivering and you're not doing a curbside pickup. That makes a lot of sense. Then, yeah, it should do that, and
I'll test that and see what happens.
Okay. Yes, and if you want to work with me to test it, I'm more than happy to help you out.
Okay, Jim, does that answer your question? Does that help you out too?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
All right,
Great.
I'm sure that answers a question a lot of people might have had. Okay, wonderful. And I see Rebecca has a question. We're also concerned about school library items, not knowing when the schools will reopen. Yeah, that's a big challenge too.
For those, I would think that probably contacting the school district. Yeah, that's
It might be hard to get in touch with the schools.
right.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you mean items on hold for the school libraries, or their material coming back to you, Rebecca?
These were returned items. We had a basket.
Okay.
We were still getting them in the book drop from
Okay.
patrons.
Yeah. I guess it would just be a matter of, I don't know, trying to store them. I don't know what the state of the schools are going to be in the fall either.
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
Rebecca, if I don't know if your district is still in session strictly, we're dropping off and picking up stuff this week. So there's going to be a big bin in front of our school, and we have to have all of the stuff that was at home that's being dropped off, LRC material, the stuff like that. They need to all go into a bin. So basically they're making a book drop and we're shoving our stuff in there.
This is Catherine from Bensenville School District 2. Very similar to that. The governor arranged so that parents can come into the buildings to pick up their student supplies. So most school districts will be open sometime the last week of their scheduled school year or the week after. So there definitely will be people around in the buildings who you can call and who are accepting returns at that point.
That's great. Thank you, Catherine. All this knowledge. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Maybe Rebecca, that might be a good solution. If you can reach out to your schools, you'll be able to find somebody who might want to come and get those materials from you. Okay. It looks like we have, this kind of was covered a little bit. Jim's question here about storing items once they're returned in book drops. It seems like we've gotten a few different suggestions from everyone. I do want to talk more about just the timing of quarantine. These items, you know, we were talking 72 hours and then Rails came out with their recommendations. So of 7 days, and we were talking about that here at SWAN. And so I have added a link to our recommendation page, also what Rails has put out. But it seems like the bare minimum of timing would be the 3 days and can go up to 7 days. Again, every library is going to end up making their own decision, but you know, from what we're hearing, from what we're seeing out there and what other libraries are doing and other consortia and all around, it seems like that hold, you know, staying quarantined for at least 72 hours seems to be at least the starting point. So if you are starting that or starting to check in materials, we have seen, Dawn showed at the fireside chat that we have seen a lot of libraries starting to check in materials. So are any of you going into your building and checking in materials? Does anyone want to talk on that? Looks like Rebecca says they're doing 5 days but switched to 7 days. CRS Liz is also doing 7 days. Okay, that's good. to know. Peggy, do you have any indication on what you'll be doing when you start?
We had planned on doing 72 hours, but with the Rails recommendation, we are going to switch to 7 days just to be safe. But
Okay.
I'm curious to know from the membership, at what point are you checking in your materials? Are you checking them in when after the quarantine time is over, or are you checking them in when the books arrive back at your library? What are people doing? Okay, so Thomas is saying you're checking them in after the quarantine time is over. Okay. All right, it seems like everybody's checking them in after their quarantine. That's what I was thinking too. Okay.
Dawn
All
has
right,
a quick question about new materials. Are you quarantining those too as well?
we're gonna quarantine, I'm gonna quarantine everything.
Okay, so your new books that are coming in to be cataloged, Tech Services is going to hold on to them for 7 days.
Yeah, yes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
I wish
Victoria's saying she's gonna
actually,
quarantine those for 3 days. Victoria Riverforth says she's gonna quarantine her new books for 3 days. I think if I understand her chat correctly. Chime in if I'm wrong, Victoria.
I was really concerned that Rails put this out not as an official recommendation, that it was sent to the director's listserv, and I think a lot of people did not receive that. So I think there was a lot of confusion of whether that was an official communication from Rails. It only went to the director's listserv. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know what the science was behind it, but it really threw a lot of things into like disarray for us because we were doing a 3 or a 5 day quarantine before that. I think that was really confusing on the part of Rails. I don't think that I think they should have sent it out as an official communication. That's just my personal.
So we received notice of this. We started hearing in the fireside chat that, oh, Rails is saying 7 days. So we were taking a look into it. And Aaron and Dawn dove into that recommendation and had some conversations. And they base their information off of these examples here and articles. And so I don't know if it was necessarily the best way to communicate this information to just the directors or not. But we wanted to make sure that we had something out there because for us, we were saying 72 hours is what we were seeing from recommendations initially from, I believe, the CDC and everything. But now, we're saying at the very least 72 hours. I wouldn't cut it any closer than that. It doesn't sound like any of you are doing that either, erring more on the side of caution. So I haven't been talking and looking at the chat, so.
Yeah, one thing that I think, since we do a lot of material handling, that's where our minds go. But I personally am far more concerned about human to human contact and especially amongst our peers. So I think we've done a lot of thinking in this area, all of us collectively, and I'm concerned that we haven't done the same amount of thinking in distancing from our colleagues and sharing the same ventilation system of airflow and those kinds of things. So that's why we did this, kind of quarantining of material. Here's the science. If Crystal scrolls down through this page, you'll see that we included a lot of other large library systems and libraries that have published their quarantining standards. And 3 days really is kind of kind of what people are using as the mean. I think I just want to put that out there. Think of the people, that's how it's transmitted. It's not really transmitted through stuff. It's transmitted through people.
Thank you, Dawn.
Victoria, Liz makes a comment that they opt, the chat is moving very quickly here, I can't read. Liz said she opted for 7 days because we are utilizing staff teams, each working 1 day a week. So the same team that took the materials into quarantine will also be the same team that checks them in. And then Victoria has another question. She said that she's heard that libraries are requiring staff that air travel or even car travel to another state quarantine for 2 weeks. She's also heard that bathrooms are an area of concern. What are people doing for that? And let's see, Sarah Marshall, I'm trying to scroll down here, said, Victoria, we are going in teams of 4 to 5 people per day, and each staff has their own toilet and sink for the day. So those are some of the comments that are coming in on the chat.
Yeah, I think that's
that
something good to talk about. I mean, Dawn brings up a good point. I mean, we're focused on the items, and you know, yeah, that's a concern we have to take into consideration. But as you're bringing these people, bringing your staff back into your building, you know, what are the safety measures that you're taking for them? We do offer a few other things here on the agenda. We have staff PPE. We also have some staff preparedness trainings that Sam and Ian put together for everyone to take a look at if you haven't already. There's some really good information in there. There's also, if you need masks or hand sanitizer, things like that, SWAN has kind of stepped in here to try to facilitate some of that, you know, take some of that off of the libraries, put together some suppliers, some references. We also have an area if you would like to purchase some PPE. Jenny will be at the office and we'll be able to do a no contact time and pick up for you to pick up some of the PPE. You can order online. We've already had quite a few libraries come in and place their orders and picked up their material, their PPE equipment. So that's going smoothly so far.
And we're using curbside communicator for that.
Yes.
Just plugging it again. It's no cost to you guys if you want to use it.
Yes, thank you. It definitely is something that's been working out for us. You know, we have to try it if we wanted to try it out and make sure that it would work before we sent it on to everyone else. But yeah, let's go into this chat here.
Yeah, Frankie has a great question.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to know, you know, for libraries that are doing groups and teams, what is the plan if someone from that group or team gets sick? Does the whole group or team then need to be quarantined?
Wow.
And Julie had responded back, yes, that is the plan at her library. And Sarah Marshall also responded back that yes, you know, and I think that's representative of what most libraries are doing. So
What
Liz
if,
Rowe,
I'm gonna throw a wrench in it, if somebody tested positive and is on that team and then somebody on that team goes and gets tested and they're negative, are you still going to have that staff not come in for 2 weeks? If they can provide a negative test
I think
result?
at Westmont, we're doing the same thing, and I think we would probably just shut down that whole team for 2 weeks. I mean, I think we take it by a case-by-case basis if someone could get the testing. I just don't know how easy it is for people to readily get tests where, or if they'll be willing to get a test potentially. We're just kind of, we're hoping we never have to determine this, but yeah, if one person on that team goes down, we're just gonna lock that team down for the 2 weeks. The good thing about our library though is all of our part-timers get PTO. So they have sick, personal, and vacation they could use. So we're not having to deal with like an unpaid issue or things like that.
And I think that's going by the contact tracing that hopefully the entire country will be doing soon. One of the things that they're doing when they contact anyone that's been in contact with someone that tests positive is asking them to self-isolate. So I would probably err on that side too.
I wanted to add, this is Brittany again, Algonquin on an assistant director's list sent around a really cool PDF from, I want to say it was MIT, one of them, and it was a graphic on not only if someone tests positive, but like it was this whole flow chart. I'm pulling it up right now so I can better describe it. Like, I've been in close contact with someone who's tested positive, who's being tested, who might have been exposed, who's been in close contact with someone else who might have been exposed, and like what people should individually do. So we were actually, it's from MIT Medical. And I can send, I don't know if people want it, you can, I don't know the best way, I could probably just send it to the CERC user group list in SWAN, but we were probably going to give it to our staff because our concern isn't even just the team aspect, but also like, what if someone gets nervous because someone in their family that they may have been in contact with test positive? What should they do? What should we do for them? So it was a nice little graphic to try to kind of figure all of that out.
Oh, thank you, Helen, for that information in the chat here. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely trying times. Yeah, Brittany said she'll share it through the listserv or maybe a forum or something like that.
the forum would be good. It would
Yeah.
be a good place to post it.
Okay. I think we have one last topic from Juan. Juan, are you on the line? Do you want to take it over? Okay. I don't know, maybe he can't hear or he's not connected. But Juan had wanted to just mention or ask about bringing staff back into a place, and emotions and everything are heightened and it's a difficult time for everybody. What are you guys thinking of? Are you instituting breaks, that they have to take breaks at certain times, or what are you doing to assist in the mental stability of your staff moving forward?
Well, I can tell you, Crystal, at my library, one of the things I'm doing is I keep really working hard to keep things very simple. you know, keep processes and procedures as simple as possible. I think, you know, making things easy right now makes things less stressful. So I think that's a good thing because, you know, as I mentioned earlier in this meeting, everything I've taught my staff, now I'm asking them to do something totally different. And I think for some people that's very, very stressful. No, I've always told you to do this. Now I want you to do something totally different. Some staff, you know, for some staff, that's very, very hard on them. You know, so that's very stressful. You don't know what people are coping with in their personal lives right now. You know, everybody, this pandemic, everybody has been touched by this in some way. You know, people's schedules are different than they used to be, so that's very stressful. I think, you know, I'm trying to really check in with my staff more than I used to. You know, there were some staff that, you know, are very, you know, they're usually very self-sufficient, very capable. They were very good independent workers, and I'm trying very hard to check in with everybody on a more regular basis and, you know, kind of just touch base and let people know that I'm there for them. So I'm trying to do that. You know, it's just a really hard time for everybody, and I'm just trying to let people know that if they need something, I'm here for them. So that's some of the things I'm doing.
That's great. Thank you, Peggy. It is pretty trying times. I'm not sure. I'm sure your staff is appreciating the check-ins and trying to keep things simple, especially because the world is tilted on its head now. Helen's suggesting maybe allowing music to be played, or they can have headphones with music being played.
This is Lucas. I'll just jump in here.
Yeah.
We are allowing people to have music on their phone or the computer they're on, but we're not letting them use headphones just because in this space where we're trying to identify when people walk into rooms and make sure we're not going to intersect, headphones might prevent that from happening effectively. We, on our end, as far as breaks, we're just really trying to split up workflows so that you are independently working on a task from beginning to end, which is also what SWAN has recommended. And what we found is it's really great because it means if you need to take a 5-minute, 10-minute break where you're outside or you're in your own closed space where you can take your mask off, your workflow isn't being paused, isn't affecting anyone else's workflow, and it's not causing there to be any sort of hold up or break in someone else's workflow. So we're just really trying to emphasize that people need to, they know their bodies, they know themselves, and they just need to take time when they need it.
That's great. That's a nice approach. Thank you for sharing that, Lucas. Does anyone else want to take the floor?
We're at Eisenhower, we're also trying to coordinate bringing lunches in for our teams, and you know, like ordering food. You know, nothing brings up morale better than good food. So we're trying to see if, you know, we can just do something with that. You know, obviously, you know, we're going to have to think about the health risks at this point and, you know, order individual lunches, you know, for people. But we're trying to see if we can, you know, just collect money from people and, you know, get lunches brought in and, you know, do that some way and do it. You know, we have to do it safely, of course, but, you know, if we can somehow have somewhat of a little bit of a party atmosphere. You know, patrons won't be in the building, so we can kind of relax a little bit from that aspect, and have maybe some nice lunches brought in for staff, especially those first weeks when we're back. We're thinking that might be something enjoyable we can do. I'm also wondering, I've seen a lot of things on Instagram that therapy dogs are really getting a workout right now. I wonder if there's anything we could do with that. I haven't broached that with the rest of the management team yet at my library, but I'd volunteer my puppy, but he's a little out of his mind yet. I don't think he'd work out. I think we might need a professional dog for this.
Yeah, puppies make everything better.
Yeah, yeah.
I think also having different options for people. I know that we have several staff that are really struggling with wearing the masks for various reasons. And so just allowing them to work in another part of the library that no one else is. I think it's not easy for everyone to wear a mask and to wear gloves.
Oh, Rebecca, I'm so glad you said that. Every time I put that mask on, I feel like disorientated. I find it so much harder to do anything with that mask on. And I don't know what it is about myself that when I have a mask on, I feel so like disorientated. It's gonna take me a long time to get used to wearing it. I don't know if it's just me or what it is, but it makes such a difference when I'm working. So see, Victoria, I'm glad you're agreeing with me. I'm not crazy. Oh, good. Well, I am crazy, but just not about this mask. All right. No, I won't be. I will not be a bank robber. You're exactly right, Dawn. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
It's not just me. Yeah, it's
Those
so
foggy
hard.
glasses too.
Yeah, when I have it on, I just want to like rip it off. It makes me so frustrated.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. And I am finding myself having a harder time. I have asthma and some bad allergies, and it's a special kind of time breathing with a mask on for sure. Oh yay, Helen's gonna post a wearing mask and glasses hack for us in the forum. So look out for that. Hopefully at least some of our glasses won't fog up. Yeah, it is pretty hard breathing.
And I was just thinking about things like, I really enjoy having a cup of coffee on my desk all the time when I'm working. And, I'm not really going to be able to do that, the way I'm used to. So, life is really, that sounds like such a selfish thing to be upset about, but I'm not going to be able to sit and really drink my coffee at my desk anymore. And I don't think you can drink coffee through a straw. I don't think, So I'm going to have to finish all my coffee before I come to work, I suppose. So, yeah, life is, who would have thought on New Year's Day that the year would have turned out like this? That's what I think about all the time. So I think it's going to be really hard on staff. I think we're going to really, I really think, it's going to be a tough time on staff. And, one of the things I'm thinking about too is we might have staff who become stressed by the way their coworkers are behaving sometimes. They may see a coworker and say, hey, that coworker, needs to wash their hands, or this coworker needs to put their mask on differently, or, we may be dealing with some of those internal issues in our building too among coworkers. That might be something that as a manager we're confronting. And I'm thinking about how that may be too, where somebody may say, hey, that person doesn't have their mask on. correctly, you need to talk to them about that, or,
Right.
So that might be a new personnel issue as managers we might be dealing with. So that could be, that could be stressful for everybody too.
Mm, absolutely.
So that might be something, we'll be confronting in the near future. And I sense from my staff too that there's going to be a lot of apprehension when patrons do start coming back into the building. That might be stressful for staff too. So.
Yeah, it's this very strange world right now.
Julie, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
have a question for Julie because I have a lot of staff evals I need to do, and I've kind of been tabling them for now because it's been such a stressful time. For staff, they just kind of put my evals aside. How have people been doing their evals? Have they been doing them via Zoom? Have they kind of just been putting evaluations on pause? What have managers been doing with their evaluations?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What we've been doing is phone or Zoom evaluations with the non-management people, and all the managers' evaluations have been put on hold.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. That's good to know. All right. Yeah, I was just kind of, I figured the world is, so stressed out right now. I wasn't sure, about adding evaluations to the mix. So I was kind of curious what everybody else was doing. All right.
Yeah, looks like Sandra's not doing evaluations. Emily is doing them over Zoom.
Okay, it's kind of 50-50, it seems like.
Oh, Jerry changed their time period.
Yeah.
So maybe that's an option. Yeah. Great. Okay. Great. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add?
I have one very quick thing to add.
Yeah, Helen.
So a bunch of people opened tickets questioning the check-in count for April. You guys saw check-ins when theoretically there wouldn't be any. And just if you opened a ticket, we probably answered you individually, but if you didn't and you were wondering why, that's because of the discard process that we did in April. So just wanted to throw that out there.
This is Julie again. I'm just going back to the evaluation. The only reason we are not pushing back the evaluations for the non-managers is because they involve raises. And we didn't think that would be fair to the employees if they were not able to get their raises when they expected.
Not yet.
Terry says, has Illinois mentioned if IPLAR will be extended? That I don't think it has. Okay, Dawn just answered, not planned to be. Okay. Yeah, since people are in different cycles for fiscal year. Terry is asking automatic for anyone who has an automatic material handler. How are you handling cleaning? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Cleaning the handlers. You know, I think who just opened today. Christine just says they're just wiping it down. Downers is opening right now, so Cheryl couldn't be with us today. We might want to ask her to.
Sorry, this is Christina at Bloomingdale. We're starting today too, so I was gone for a little while. So ideally, all the materials coming back to our coming through our handler have already gone through quarantine. So we're not really taking any super special precautions to clean it, other than, you know, just making sure, like with everything else, that we're wiping it down regularly.
Great.
Thanks, Christine. I was actually going to chime in and say the same thing. Like, wherever possible, if you have space, just quarantine your materials before putting them in the AMH. That's probably your best bet.
Victoria, we talked about if your staff member is tested positive, but she wants to touch back on if your staff has traveled. Are you making them quarantine for 2 weeks? Jerry, is that a yes for you're making staff quarantine if they've traveled? Yes, if we know about it. Okay. So yeah, I think that'll kind of be something that, you know, we kind of go along and live and learn. It's nice to have answers, but it's hard in certain times. Liz, they're not requiring that. Stephanie says out of state, out of country, by car, by plane. Her original question, Stephanie, was if they travel by plane or car out of the state. But I assume the same would apply for out of the country. Yeah. Jerry says they asked him to disclose, but that's not, you know, always what happens. Okay, so.
You know,
Karen has, yeah.
You know, in regard to the kind of technology equipment cleaning, we did see a post on Cersei Dynex, and I'm just double checking. I thought that I linked it in our COVID pages, and I just want to make sure that we did. I thought it had some helpful tips on how to clean things and which things can be cleaned with what. Let me try and get that link for you guys.
Jerry says there's also a HR source link, and that's what kind of prompted their discussion there. Yeah, okay. So Dawn put that in there as well. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Jerry, if you don't mind, if you find that link, you can put that in this chat too. Thanks. Okay. Is there any questions we missed? The chat kind of went a little fast there.
Did you see Karen's question about going over which reports from distribution services should be processed?
Oh, your Blue
Did you
Cloud
see that?
Analytics reports?
Because, yeah, can you go over the reports from distribution services as far as when those reports should be processed?
It depends on what report you mean, Karen.
If you're talking about the missing in transits, those are the reports on workflows have been paused. So before we resume them, we will most likely be sending out a large list for everyone to do a shelf check. We know that libraries haven't been able to be in the building to check their shelves for them, and we also will most likely not resume it until delivery has been in place for a while again. We still haven't come to a decision on when we're going to resume the missing in transits and the removal of missing in transits. So that would be that one. The custom long overdue report also has been paused. So you can hold off on those until we resume that also. I believe those will be, you should be able to just use the last report you receive for checking the shelves because it's anything that is at least 361 days overdue. So that report is going to just continue to accumulate. Where the in transit reports for 10 to 30 days will not continue to accumulate because it's only the 10 to 30 days. And then the other distribution services would be for your patron cleanup reports. So those you can do at any time. Am I missing any others, guys?
I don't think so. What do we need to do? Tom has a question about digital cards. Sounded like you will automatically extend them closer to the 15th.
Yes, so we're going to extend all digital cards through end of August. And we are going to constantly keep an eye on how we're all reopening, and we may go to a library by library in the future, you know, based on if you're open and people can come in and convert to a full card, but we want to give people that time. So we will extend those through August 31st, any that are going to expire between June 15th and end of August.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is this something we're doing automatically, Dawn, or do they have to send in a ticket?
No, we're doing it automatically across the board because we know people just aren't open and prepared to convert those right now.
That's good news.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, there are no more questions. I am going to just plug a few meetings here. The next circulation user group meeting is June 17th, and the next circulation advisory is July 15th. But if any of you are interested, we do have another meeting coming up on June 4th, led by Debbie Walsh and Sue, and it's the Public Services Users Group. We were having a meeting this month, but we've changed it to June 4th so that anyone, going to their ALA workshops that's coming up, there wasn't a conflict or anything like that. So it's all the registrations up on L2. Feel free to come and join that meeting. That's also going to be held very similarly to this, or very similar to all of our other meetings. So if anyone else need to add anything here? No, Vicki, Dawn, Helen, Sam. Okay, quiet. All right, well, Peggy, thank you so much for helping out today with this agenda and getting everything organized. Yes, Tom, thank you. Good luck to everyone out there starting curbside. Stay safe, stay well. We wish you all the best, and we're always here in case you need anything. So thank you. Thanks for adding that, Dawn. Dawn added a document on the COVID-19 resources of our tech cleaning, regarding tech cleaning. So please feel free to take a look at that. Other than that, I will let you guys all go for the day. These links are on the SWAN page along with this agenda. We'll get this recording turned around a couple of days, and you can, if you missed something or had to drop out, had to come back in, feel free to view this recording later. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Crystal.
Bye-bye.
Good luck, you guys.
Bye. Bye.